Here we are live in the spoiler room, everyone. It's a new month. Hello, August. How are you doing? And yes, with a new month comes a new theme, which tonight we're kicking it off with our month, which I have deemed One Night in Bangkok Makes a Hard Man Humble. And yes, so One Night in Bangkok, we're looking at 4 films that involve Bangkok, usually taking primarily almost completely in the capital of Thailand, or at least most of it. So we got an interesting lineup this month. As you can imagine, there's going to be a lot of probably action involved with it. So, yes, thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and sharing your favorite drink with us. And tonight I have my wonderful right hand man. Guy keeps coming back for more with us tonight to talk about this Nicolas Cage film, which is called appropriately Bangkok Dangerous. Yes, Bangkok Dangerous. It is from, I believe, 2008. So it's 15 years old, this movie. So
It's
how
not a
you
perfect 10, it's a perfect 15. There you go.
it's a perfect 15. How you doing tonight, Ian?
I'm doing great, especially now that you gave me that tip that my to get off my Wi-Fi and onto my Ethernet. This is wonderful. Airplane mode for the win.
Airplane mode for the win. Yeah. Who knew my day job might actually come in handy? But uh, besides just paying the bills. But there's some bills to pay tonight for those bad guys out there. And Nicolas Cage has come to collect. Ian, hey, since you're here, why don't you give the synopsis of Bangkok Dangerous?
My name is Joe. This is what I do. 4 hits, 1 location, 1 last job. I looked into his eyes. I saw myself. He's only one man. You're the target now. It's pretty simple. Leave the country or you're going to die. That's the plot, based solely on the dialogue from this movie.
Wow, you do a great Nick Cage. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
But you know, it's not like Nick Cage deciding to do a Southern accent for no particular reason for Con Air. But that was really good. I still don't know why he did a Southern accent for that. But anyway, I'm gonna save the day. Wait, why? Why are you doing the Southern accent?
I still remember. I saw that movie once 6 years ago, and I still remember his character's name from that movie, Cameron Poe.
Cameron Poe. Yeah.
Oh, wow. But yeah, so Nick Cage is a hitman who travels the world apparently, but not really Bangkok, because he doesn't seem to know a whole lot about the culture and the goings on there. Yeah, he gets contracted for one last job, and he's looking to retire after that because he's kind of like lonely and disconnected from humanity and disconnected from himself. And um, yeah, he shows up, he picks up a like a street thief, a pickpocket, to be his kind of contact. The guy's name is Kong. So Joe and Kong kind of form this weird symbiotic relationship, and Kong wants to learn the ways of the trade from Joe, and Joe is reluctant to take him on as kind of an apprentice, but he does. And yeah, these kind of like these 4 assassinations that need to be done. Uh, in the midst of it, Kong ends up falling in love with a dancer, who is part of one of the, I think, the first assassinations. Like, there's all these wild, elaborate setups. Like, you got to go to this club, and you get a suitcase from this guy, and then you give like this bill that's marked with an X to this dancer, and the X has to be face up. That kind of a deal. And then Joe, he meets a pharmacist who's deaf, and he falls in love with her, and they kind of like fall in love with each other. But due to his day job, there are complications. And so the whole narrative in this hour and 40-minute almost movie is these 4 jobs, these 3 relationships, kind of, and lots of action, and a shootout in one of those refillable water cooler jug factories, which was amazing. Mark, I don't know how this movie has a 9% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 26% audience score. I really dug this movie, and I feel like it was unfairly maligned in 2008, or maybe it's just that critics back then didn't know no offense to Mr. Cage or his fans, what kind of movies Nicolas Cage would be doing 15 years later, but this is like the last gasp of him like really trying, I feel like. Aside from some things like Pig and there are a
Yeah.
couple others in the last few years, but this is like pre I'll do anything for
N-
Lionsgate, Nick Cage.
this is one of those where he was still considered kind of the action guy. He could pull off the action guy very well. Later on, he did kind of action, but like you said, yeah, he's pulled in a little bit more dramatic roles. He pulled in ones to where he's more of the thinking action guy versus the physical action guy. But here he is still physical action guy, done by the same directors who did the original Bangkok Dangerous from 1999 2000, which has a completely different story.
Really? It wasn't until I was looking up reviews of this that someone made a reference to it's the Pang brothers.
Yeah, the Pang
That
brothers. Yeah.
yeah, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is nowhere as near as good as the original." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know this is a remake, but the original was totally different?"
Well, not completely different, but here's the summary for the Bangkok Dangerous, the 1999 version, written by someone from Milwaukee, no less. Hey, Wisconsin represent! I just pulled it
Wow.
up. Yeah. So the story there is a deaf mute hitman and his partner are based in Bangkok. He is friends with his partner's girlfriend, who is a stripper at the local club. They go about their assassination business as usual as the boss climbs the underworld ladder and forms new alliances. Flashbacks explain how he got to this point in his life, forms a relationship with a young woman at a pharmacy who is carrying an innocent. The hunt continues as treachery begins. A big name hit makes him realize that good people are hurt by his actions. First rule of assassination closes in on him and he strikes revenge. So it is actually a bit similar, except for his character, who, was a mute. and
It sounds like someone wrote the story points for this on a deck of cards, and then they played 52 pickup with all the traits. Like they just mixed everything around for the remake. That original sounds really interesting.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
and the original, and it is Kong is actually the assassin in that one.
what?
A character named Kong. Yeah, Kong is the assassin in that one, I believe.
Oh, wait, I thought you meant the actor who plays him in the remake
No,
was the
no, no,
assassin
no,
from the first
no,
one.
no,
Okay.
no. It's different actor, different character, but his name was Kong,
Okay.
the killer. So interesting remake that they did with Nick Cage, but at least it's the same director, the Pang brothers. So you're getting that similar vein, and there is that story with his we're just calling him Nick Cage, but Joe, we're just gonna keep calling him Nick Cage.
Because I think he only mentions his name like once in the movie because
I
no one
think
ever
so, yeah.
refers to him as by his name because no one really knows who he is, but it's just in the narration, like they call me Joe. Yeah.
No, no one, yeah, no one knows me, and it's better that way. You know,
I kept thinking whenever he would do his narration, I kept thinking of Sin City because this is such like hard-boiled Frank Miller,
hmm
tough guy narration. It's so
Oh,
fun.
it made me now, and he could pull it off now. Made me want to see Nick Cage do a noir movie now. After watching this, because this is pretty much.
Well, there was
Yeah.
before the strikes happened, there was talk of him doing the I know it's not the same thing, but the noir verse Spider-Man, like a
Yeah,
solo
the noir.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have. That was one of my favorite characters from Spider Verse. But back to Joe here, our hitman. Um, he, it's Nicolas Cage, and I love Nicolas Cage. Good or bad, I've grown to love him. I didn't at first, I will say, but he's grown on me over the years. But this character, he tries to show emotion, but I never feel it with this guy. I
And that was one of the criticisms that I read of it, but I think it works for this because that's kind of the
sure,
whole we get that from the opening
right.
narration. It's almost like Harrison Ford's narration as Deckard in Blade
Mhm.
Runner.
Sure, yeah.
Especially especially if you're going with the theory that he's a replicant, but he's, thinks he's a human being, but he doesn't quite
Right.
understand why he can't really feel anything. that's what I kind of took
Mhm.
from this Nick Cage character. He's been killing people for however many years. It's all about the money. And when your job, you get paid fabulous amounts of money to kill people, and you have no idea who you're killing. They could be a drug dealer, a human trafficker, or as we see at the end of this movie, an alleged man of the people that's trying to help folks, and the people who want him dead are the evil drug dealers and traffickers. So like that does something to you, and I think that
Yeah.
when his relationship with the deaf pharmacist name whose name translates to rain,
Yep.
and I think a absolutely lovely scene where she explains to him what her name is and how to sign it. They're standing at a window as it's raining outside. I was not expecting that from this movie,
Mhm.
and I think again, I feel like if this were to come out now, this would be possibly regarded as part of the Cage Assance, where he does a lot of like kind of lower tier
Yeah.
garbage, and then he does this sort of prestige picture every once in a while.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that because you're right. It was better than I expected it to be. Let's put it that way. From 2008, you see Nick Cage, you're like, oh, this is after this he got a apparently he got a multi-film he had a multi-film agreement after this movie, and they actually rebuilt some of the sets in that so they didn't have to travel much for the next movies, I guess. Um, but you're right. The touching moment, there's more heart in here than you might expect from the way it starts off with this hard boiled where he plays the assassin Joe. We see how calculating he is with his watch, which was a real watch, which I guess it endorsed or something. Anyway, uh,
Wow.
but he's calculating. He's got the guy who's his delivery guy who he sets up and kills and makes it look like they're a heroin junkie. So he dopes them up and that. So I mean, this is not a really great guy you're introduced here with Joe, but then you hear him talking about one last job, and you're like, well, that we know how this is gonna go. Don't ever say one last job. That's just like saying you're in a horror movie and you go, if we get out of this, I'm gonna do that. Don't say that because you're gonna die. Okay.
But what I liked about this movie is, yeah, he's doomed from the start. We know because in all these one last job movies, the protagonist, it's the noir trope. They end up, dying, either killing themselves or getting killed to protect someone or a blaze of glory or whatever. But I really liked that the innocents in this movie, they get to live. I mean, on
Yeah.
the one hand, this goes to the deepest, darkest levels of a society that's built on, sexual, like sex trafficking, drugs,
Mm,
crime. But on the other hand, you've got that reformer politician who the assassin decides, I can't do this because my right hand man, who I was just treating as an errand boy, but we've kind of have this relationship now, he says, "Oh, that guy is great. My people really love him because he's trying to change things like you. You go and you take out the bad guys." And he's like sitting there, with the politician in his sight, this like recreation of Dealey Plaza, and he's like, he just can't do it. And that brings the world of hell down onto him. But then the deaf pharmacist, uh, she, of her own volition, she doesn't end up getting captured or
right.
fridged or anything,
Mhm.
which drives him into insane like Scarface rage. She just their love story resolves itself by him going back to say, essentially, give me a second chance. Then she's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. I
Huh.
kind of know what you're about.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice because the people who make the good, upright choices, even Kong, who is a street thief and he's very kind of troubled in the beginning, you get the feeling that he learned some stuff, and by the end of the picture, he might be trying to turn his life around.
Well, yeah, and Joe, for all how cold and calculated he is, he takes Kong under his wing after he sees Kong get the crap beat out of him while transporting the suitcase at one point, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll train you." And he because you get this teacher student rather than employee, bag runner uh relationship with this, and you get a bit of a training montage in here which surprised me, and it does take some very interesting directions. Yeah, yeah, it surprised me with the deaf mute pharmacist that they had as his love interest, because that's also something a bit different that you don't see, because he wants to go on a date with her, and I'm like sitting there going, yeah, how's that going to work? You don't know a lick of sign language. I mean, you don't know any sign language.
Right, but that's the nice thing about it is he figures all of that out.
Right.
Like, to me, the logistics of him working up the nerve to ask out this woman and actually going on the date and then kind of like she's helping him to understand
Mhm.
her, that's cooler than, "Oh, here's I'm gonna take these paint cans and make them into bombs," you know? Right? But that's the other nice thing is they go out on this lovely date, which is interrupted because these thugs come after him, and she has no idea because, of course, she can't hear anything, so she turns her back, and that's when he gets jumped, and when he shoots the one guy, the blood splatters on her sweater, and she, like, feels it, and then she
Mhm.
turns around, realizes the horror, and then runs away, and I think that her disability in a way saves the story from a cliche because
Mhm.
he can't really sit there and be like, "It isn't what you think. Please come back. I can explain myself. I've
Yeah.
had a rough life," or whatever, because he cannot communicate with her in a way that she would really understand.
Mhm.
Um, it's so nice. There's a lot going on in this movie. It's not a 9% movie, Mark.
No, I would agree that it's not a 9% movie. The ending falls it a little bit. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, the recreation, and if you folks don't realize this is a recreation of the JFK assassination, I don't know what rock you've been under, but you should seek some historical footage, because I'm watching this going, "Oh, this is way too okay, I get what it's like, whoo." Like, down to the car and where the guy's wife is sitting and him I'm just like, wow, man. Wow.
The only thing that would've made that scene better is if
Clint Eastwood
some
came
of the
up and
well, but no, because they had snipers on,
Mhm.
covering the plaza,
Right.
police force. Would have been interesting if because at that point, the people who had contracted Cage's character to pull off the hit against this guy, they knew that he had been compromised, and they had set into motion, I think, the
Nope, I lost you there.
I'll come back in a sec.
Yep,
Mode is failing me, but,
there you
no.
go.
So, Kong and his girlfriend had already been, like, compromised or kidnapped or whatever. I was
Right.
waiting for some of those snipers to be working for the bad guys, so Nick Cage would have to try and figure out who he has to take out, like, from the rooftops.
Yeah, I thought maybe, they do a dual assassin thing to where he's going to do the assassination and then they would get assassinate him or something, along that lines, maybe, because yeah, but because the big boss guys realize that knocking off a political person is a big deal, and it's going to bring some major heat unless they get rid of everybody involved who knows that they're, and so yeah, they don't go after the pharmacist because they aren't quite sure who Joe is. So they end up going after Kong and his girl to get Kong to talk, to admit on who Joe is and where he lives. And I thought that was an interesting angle too, because I thought for sure you see it coming. They break up and you're like, okay, here they are. He's going to be pining for her. He does get a little creeper stalking her outside her window and driving past the pharmacy a little bit. But I thought maybe they were going to have, when the bad guys go get the girl, I'm like,
Right.
oh, I see where this is going, but instead they get the girl of Kong, that Kong's been then sweet talking and in a relationship with her starting one. And yeah, I thought that was an interesting twist on that expectation. And Kong tries to be as loyal as possible, but even Joe understands that Kong finally talked because he's like, "You're not me." Um, but
Well, on top of that, the girl, I think her name was An,
yeah, yeah.
the yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
dancer.
Fawn was her, the FON, I think it is. Yeah,
Well, she
yeah,
was first approached, and the bad guys were like, "Look, if you don't help us, we're gonna do to your younger sister what we did to you."
yeah,
There's a lot
yeah,
implied there because at that point she had a black eye, but you're also like, I don't know how long they've had her and what they've done. But there's
yeah.
a look when Kong gets jumped in that hangar or wherever they were, and he sees that his girl is up in the rafters with these hoods.
Mhm.
The look on his face is kind of like disappointment, but also like they probably have you over a barrel. I can't be totally mad at you. And
Yeah,
that kind of reverberates through the other character relationships in the story down to Kong and Joe.
yeah. And Kong got a chance to show that Joe's training had pay off because it's like a month. Joe plans on being there for at least a month, and so we did get to see Kong a little bit in action, which was nice to see. That his training, uh, actually did pay off. Besides the montage and the shooting of watermelons, so there was that. But you're right. Well, I think there's also the realization, not only her, maybe not so much disappointment with her, but just like he's like, ah, crap. He knew where this was going. He's been around long enough that he's like, yeah, here we go. Okay.
Well, and also, I like the kind of the parallels. They don't really draw attention to it, but it's there. The idea of like different kinds of dancers, because
Yeah.
Kong's girl is like an exotic dancer, and everything that kind of implies for this kind of situation that everybody's in. And then you've got Rain, the pharmacist, who does
Hmm.
this kind of like very performative, like dress up kind of dance. And there's a montage of training, blowing the head, blowing up watermelons with a handgun, and then Rain, dancing, and Nick Cage, like in one moment he's enjoying his new love, like
Yeah.
expressing herself, and the next he's helping a guy like blow up these figurative heads. It's really great. Like there's a lot, like I've said, there's a lot more going on in this movie than just,
It's
hard
got
boiled guy goes to Bangkok.
it's got layers. There's
It does.
layers here. There are layers here.
It's like a fine
Uh
dip.
there's also a touch of as cool and calm and collective as he plays, and how very difficult it is him to show any outward emotion towards Aom, Rain. Uh, 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 you know, we do get a little bit of a hint that I almost want a prequel, that he has a bit of anger issues because there's a hit that goes a bit wrong for him. His second last hit
It's the
ends,
boat.
yeah, boat. The boat, uh, it ends up going wrong because of an unexpected person. They're in this floating market, and he's got a camera out, an old handy cam, because it's 2008, folks. I have something similar to that, but not with the gun, because it's got the gun. He's got the camera right on top of the gun that's hidden in flowers, and he's just about to hit his mark when this vendor comes up and disrupts them. And then there's people taking pictures of him because of the disruption, and that draws attention to him. And then, of course, this guy, being the bad guy that he is, he notices the gun, and then it triggers this wild chase in a boat sequence, to which our man Joe goes from boat to motorcycle, and then his motorcycle gets shot, and he flies off his motorcycle onto the boat with his mark, and he kills him. But it's like the first time, I will say, that you, and one of the only times you see in the movie, him showing like some serious outward emotion when he gets to the guy finally who ran. Like, he was nervous his assassination attempt was not going to happen, and he seemed very like legitimately emotional about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of emotion earlier on in the movie when he first meets Kong, because you can tell he's getting really frustrated. Like he thinks he's got a good connection, but this guy keeps asking these questions and
Right.
all that. So yeah, he gets like kind of hot under the collar. But yeah, there is something going on with that boat assassination. First of all, it was a really nice surprise when he gets onto the boat and like the motor is like flapping around. It cuts the guy's hand off. You're like,
Yeah, he cut the
I
guy's
it was
arm off. Uh,
I was not expecting that. I was like, wow. Um, he takes the gun out of the guy's hand and he's standing over him pointing down, like pointing at us. And he's killing us, but then he's just like kind of standing there for a long time. And then of course I got a TV commercial because I'm watching this on Freevee, which
Yeah.
totally breaks the mood.
I had that too, just the random commercial. But then when you come back, you get that wonderful shot. Instead of seeing the actual like bullets and squib and you cut to underwater and you see the bullets go through the boat. And I'm like, wow, that was really creative.
Yes, it was artsy, but it wasn't just like it wasn't pretentiously artsy. Maybe it was, but it was, again, it was a visual I was not expecting. It was a visual that's very, beautiful to see. Um, but yeah, I would assume that some of that anger, those anger issues that are coming out, likely the frustration because you get the idea that this guy is not used to screwing up or having his
Yeah.
plans go so
Mhm.
horribly wrong. And because he doesn't usually get that close to danger, he probably doesn't get that close to death because he
Mhm.
understands what happens if his mark gets away because everything is timed. He's got the papers that he receives from those packages that he immediately burns. He's got that watch that has like the hours down to the seconds, and he's very specific about timing things. So who knows what would have he probably I he might there might have been people watching him to make sure that this went down. He might not have
Yeah.
gotten out of that dock if he hadn't performed.
Yeah, yeah, it makes you wonder if he realizes he may be being watched for these jobs, even though they don't know who he is, or at least the area where he's, supposed to assassinate. There's somebody in the area to make sure that he does the job right. And so he has that in the back of his mind, maybe a little bit. And also, as the film goes on, I think he starts to get a little he lets his guard down. I mean, because as we mentioned, he starts to get in a relationship, he gets closer to Kong because he thinks he's on his way for Twilight, for assassination. So it seems like he's trying to do a little bit more, be a little bit more human so that when he finally does do the final assassination, he can at least somewhat acclimate to regular society, and maybe that's why he started to, the shells started to crack, so to speak. And it's interesting with the assassination attempt scene, and we go back to it, the final one, because he debates for quite some time before taking the shot, because there's a number of opportunities he could take the shot, and we see him really struggle to not complete the mission.
Well,
Like he's done it for so long. This is his mission. It's like going against his nature.
right, and there's a nice fake out where he
Mhm.
does take the shot and the bullet like goes through the air and through the town and you see it go like almost right to the forehead of the guy in the car. But then you realize like as this bullet is traveling, he's flashing back to I don't think it's everyone he's killed in his career because it's not that long a montage, but
No.
it's the ones that really stick out as the people he's killed. And then you realize, oh well, he didn't actually kill the guy. That's a change of heart. But yeah, it's not something I was necessarily expecting.
Yeah, there is the misdirection, and I appreciated that. I was like, "Oh, okay," because you would accept it either way. That's the thing is when he pulls the trigger, I'm like, "Oh, he pulled the trigger. Okay." I'm like, "Okay, he's gonna
Well,
deal with the consequences," because either way, you know, he's got a target on his back from the big boss, from a conversation we saw from the big boss earlier, who's paranoid about anybody knowing that he put out a hit on a political figure. So it's like you kind of know Joe's ticket is punched before he even sets up for the assassination. You're just like, one way or the other, they're going to come after him. So you get that extra part as an audience going, dude, you don't have to shoot him because they're going to come after you either way.
Well, I mean, to your point, like the twilighting on the assassination thing. I mean, he does kind of. You get the sense he's kind of got senioritis, because I don't know if he's ever on any of these jobs he's done over how many places, how many years, if he's ever been sweet on someone, or if this really is the first time that he's actually been able to find someone who he's interested in, who's interested in him. But yeah, it does make him a little softer, a little like focused on, oh, well, I've got this thing lined up. This is going to be great. In a week, I'm going to be off. I'm going to have like $1 billion, and I'm going to sail off with my new,
Yeah.
pharmacist beauty. But yeah, it does. He takes his eye off the ball. Here, I want to ask you a question. The two people that jumped them in the park and that date that they were
Yeah.
on, were those supposed to be like random thugs, or were those people connected with the job somehow? I didn't
No,
quite understand what I was looking at.
they were just random thugs because it
Okay.
is, because one night in Bangkok, it it changes a person. But no, they start off when he describes Bangkok, on he talks about how, no pun intended, how dangerous it is, basically how, corrupt and everything is, and crime is pretty prevalent in town. So yeah, it was just random thugs, and he defended himself in a way an assassin would defend himself, like fairly efficiently, and brutally. And that's what it is. But they were just, because they were walking in the park, they were just park thugs. They weren't part of any mission or anything. I think they were just, because I think if they would have been part of like the boss's gang or whatever, we would have had a scene or something to address it later, going,
Mm.
oh, but they didn't know who he was at the time. So the fact at that point they still didn't know who he was, it's just supposed to be taken as two random thugs. The problem is they took his wallet. She didn't realize that was his wallet. So she turns around with blood on her jacket, turns around and sees that he's killed two guys, and he's standing over one with a gun and a wallet. She's like, couldn't wait till you get me home. You had to do that, on the way. You couldn't have waited till at least you took me to the door. Hey, what, dude? Seriously.
He's an addict. He just can't stop killing people.
He's just addicted to death. Uh,
That's got to be another Nicolas Cage movie.
that's another Nicolas Cage. Nick Cage, if you ever are actually watching this, do a movie called Addicted to Death. There you go.
He can go around like breaking up fentanyl dealers or something like that.
Something like that. But yeah, it's his character is interesting. The side characters are interesting. They give him some extra. Even our main bad guys, because they're doing business, and the one boss is a little reluctant to do business with Joe because they've not met him. He kind of want to meet this guy, and they're like, yeah, but he comes highly regarded by the Russians. I'm like, and that's near the beginning. You're just like, I'm supposed to like Joe, really? Because here he is, an assassin. He just kills this guy who's his lackey and makes it look like heroin. And oh yeah, he's in league with Russian. What? Wait, we're supposed to like this guy?
Well, I mean, I don't think it was necessarily the Russian government, but I
No,
think
but
those
yeah,
are probably just like the last people that he worked
right.
for or something. He comes highly recommended. I mean, that's the thing, is I like that, because when I first his relationship with Kong
Yeah.
is a bit more tender, you think, than
Hmm.
other couriers that he's worked with or whatever, other lackeys. But the guy in the beginning of the movie, because he kills him like right away, you're not really sure, like, did they have a relationship? Was he an innocent, or what's the deal there? Because he does make a very deliberate choice to throw away the special like needle bag that he carries with the poison in it to kill to no connections. There can't be any trace of him having ever been there. But you realize this guy's taken quite a shine to Kong, and he's not as disposable as some of these other people.
Well, and he debates though. They do this very subtle thing to where it's where I think if is a different movie, you'd have it more upfront, but it's a little bit more subtle. So the first time after he gets his courier, he gets the drug bag with the heroin in it, because that's what apparently he usually stages his couriers as once they're done, as addicted to heroin. But he throws that bag away, and then when he goes to then he kicks back into assassin mode after he's rejected by the pharmacist. He kind of is like, well, yeah, and he kicks right back into assassin cold mode. He's like, well, I tried that, didn't work. Back to being cold hearted. And an extra sign of that is when he opens the gun case for his final assassination, there's another bag with a needle in it. Now, it's not addressed too much. I think he picks it up maybe and looks at it, but there's another bag. So he got another bag of heroin that he was going to go back and, gives you the impression he might kill Kong still,
And that was something that I missed, or maybe like
Mhm.
misinterpreted. I don't know, because when he opens up that case and sees that in there, it almost felt to me like that was something that came with the case that he got to do the job, like it was delivered to him
Oh, right.
as part
Sure.
of a package and not something that he had necessarily put together.
Mhm.
I could be wrong about that. I did find it funny that the way he gets rid of that first package with the needle and the heroin was he
Yeah.
throws it at the elephant in like the zoo or something like
Yeah.
that. I'm like,
he throws it in
someone
the
could,
wall. Yeah.
well, because it's like right there, like someone could find that and like OD or whatever.
Yeah, he throws it in the water in front of the elephant pen or whatever paddock, and I'm just like, wait, dude, what? That's how you? It's Bangkok. Just toss it in the trash, man. I'm sure it's not the first, in depending the neighborhood that he's in. Some of the neighborhoods, like where Kong is driving through, I'm sure you could probably just toss that bag on the side and someone would take it.
Well, that's not a good solution either.
Well, no, but I
Can
mean,
elephants do heroin? No. Oh.
they're too smart for that. But
Oh.
Cog, and that's the thing, they don't go too heavy into anybody's background, really. We don't even get a huge background on Joe. We don't get a huge background on Kong. We know he's in for some money with some people because that's how he got jumped. Um, and I like that. They tell you enough about these characters for you to care, but we don't get too much into the backstory of pretty much everyone in this.
Well, and also, this movie is not big on speeches. I mean, to your
Yeah.
point, like the first time we see Kong, he might as well just be like a random piece of like establishing shot scenery. We see these kind of American tourists going through the street, and this guy stops them on the street. Is like, "Hey, you guys, you like girls or do you like boys? Can we get you some drugs or whatever?" And they're like, "No, no, no." And while he's talking with them, like yucking it up, we see he's got like a razor blade in his finger, and he's subtly cutting open the back of this guy's backpack and slipping out his wallet.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever seen that before. But you're not thinking, oh, this is going to be this street hustler, this con artist is going to be one of the main characters in the movie,
Mhm.
right? Nicolas Cage
Yeah.
is watching him and everything, but 2 minutes later you see him, oh, he's approaching him and asking him to work with him. And when Kong goes to the club for that first job, he becomes enamored with this dancer, and then we keep cutting back to he keeps going back to the club, and we see the relationship building, but there's not, again, none of these big speeches. It doesn't become its own separate movie. It's like these little hints that this character is changing and growing into someone that by the end of the movie we're rooting for, this guy who when we first meet him is just ripping people off, and just he could
Yeah.
be like a completely despicable lowlife, but no, he's sort of a hero.
Yeah, yeah, I like the turn that they had, because you're right, the way, because especially when we first see Kong, just before that, we get the wonderful noir speech of how corrupt and how dangerous the streets of Bangkok are, and how there's criminals, and then we see Kong, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is just him observing a crime happening, and he's just like, yeah, okay, it's Bangkok. Uh,
Well, no, but you bring up a good point that I hadn't really thought about that, because that is the person. Look, it might be true. I don't know. I've never been to Bangkok. I've heard, stories and all. I've seen movies much like this one. But in that opening monologue, when he's talking about Bangkok, he is just talking about the negatives, the stereotypes based on the reputation. What
right.
we see throughout the film is, yes, there is that element, but there are also good people in, just
Mhm.
trying to make it in this corrupt city. So you can't just write everybody off.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's he talks about at the beginning of the film what he knows of Bangkok, or what he's heard of Bangkok, and he lives in the underground anyway, so he's only seen the underbelly of things. You're right. It's when he gets to that relationship with Ohm, where she shows him the other side of Bangkok, where he realizes he can't eat Thai food because it's very, very spicy. In this one, in this wonderful scene too, where we catch up to him in the middle of dinner, and he looks like he's going to die. I mean, he's already sweating, and she's just like, oh, this is really good. He's just like, and she's like, here, eat this leaf. He's like, okay, oh, that's better. That's better. And then they bring some more Thai food, and he tries something like, oh my god, it's hot again.
That's what you call caged heat.
Caged heat. There it is. Now, that's a completely different movie. And I've seen that one. But anyway, women in prison films, man. But this is not a women's in prison film. This is it's not really a noir. I mean, it starts off noir, but it ends up something different, I think. I mean, I don't know if you could call it a completely straight noir, because there is a little bit of too much happy.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is it's not really the femme fatale that is like the
Right.
downfall of our troubled protagonist. It's the promise of a better life and him realizing what he is
Mhm.
that leads to his downfall. I mean, at the very end, I'll skip to the very end. We should talk about the climax, like the big,
Yes, yes,
going
yes.
through the
Yeah.
building stuff. But at the end, when he's sitting in that car and he's got the last, there's two main bad guys. One is already dead at this point. He's got the other, the bigger dude with him, got a gun on him, sitting in the back seat of this car, and he's like looking at himself through the rear view mirror, and like kind of understanding, this is who I am. I was fooling myself thinking that anybody could love me, and it's kind of a self-pitying thing. But again, at the end, when he puts the gun up to his temple and he's got the other guy in like a bear hug, so the idea is the bullet's going to go straight through him and
Both
take
of
both
them,
of them
yeah.
out, which it does. That is, and I'm not saying this is a ripoff or an homage, but it lines up perfectly with the end of, I think it was the Sin City graphic novel, A Dame to Kill For,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
it was Bruce Willis's character. Maybe it was in the
Yep.
original Sin City, but yeah, he kills himself. And he's like,
Yeah,
"I
it
love
was it
you."
was it was in the original SimCity. It was he kills himself because of what he had done and the person he had become and what he had gone on. Yeah, he kills himself.
Right. So
And
that's sort of mirrored here, and both movies are trying to do this like neo noir thing. I think both very effectively.
yeah, it is effective. I mean, this whole final scene, it's interesting because I will say the final, if you say showdown, to where the first part where he blows up his own house, that is more kind of expected. He's got a makeshift bomb. He blows up a couple of guys who don't completely die right away, but he gets the information he needs from them. But then
He's
what?
in a bathtub that's apparently made from the same material as the fridge from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Well, yeah, no. If word to the wise, if you have an explosion coming, just hide in the bathtub, because every bathtub will protect you from any explosion, shockwave, or whatnot. You might get some ceiling falling on you like he does here, but overall, you're okay. You'll be
Yeah,
protected. You're good.
it's just like it's practically plaster. It's
It
harmless. Yeah.
is. It's literally a bunker in your bathroom. It's a bathroom bunker. Okay. So there you, there you go. But so there's that cliche part. But then he starts his the final showdown to where he just annihilates people in the bad guy base. Which part of the reason he shoots himself too is because he ends up getting shot. He gets a really bad wound, but he takes a guy who's still alive and uses him as a human shield as he goes into the base. I'm like, oh damn. Oh
But it's again, this is something that they may have done before, but I haven't
yeah,
seen. Sneaks up behind a watchman, crosses arms around the guy, and uses that to shoot the other people around him. Partially, I think, because from that vantage point, because it's so dark, the other guards probably can't tell that there's someone behind him. They're like,
right.
"Wait,
Yeah,
why is one of our own taking us out? This doesn't make any
right.
sense."
And then he takes on one of the henchmen, but it's not the right hand man henchman. It's like one of the other henchmen in the water fight, which lots of water, lots. I don't think I've ever seen water bottles falling in slow motion before. I will say I've watched many, many, many action films in my 40 some odd years I've been on Earth, and I don't think I've ever seen falling water bottles in slow mo. And it was beautiful. I'm like, oh, I've not seen that before.
I will say it's one of the cooler action scenes I've watched.
Oh. But anyway, they're shooting at each other, and this is not John Wick clean shooting. This is just these are two folks trying to hit one another, and he ends up getting hit, but he ends up killing the guy who shot him after he gets the information out of him of where Kong and his girl are at. But what I loved about this, and it was unexpected, is normally in films like this, you get the right hand man who is the most trained of the guys that of the big boss, of the
Mhm.
boss guy. He's the dude that does all the dirty work. He's the leader, whatnot. He's usually the one that you do the major fight with, like tuk, 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 Yeah, there's not too much fighting between Joe and our final right hand man henchman conflict. They're at two ends of a hallway, and Joe is shooting, and he actually runs out of bullets. They run out of bullets, and then he sneaks up on the guy, hits him, and it doesn't last long. You think this is going to be like a major fight showdown. No, hits him, turns around, slams against the wall, puts a grenade against his belly, and then ducks as the guy explodes. And we get a shitty dummy exploding in half, which in beautiful, gory fashion. Oh,
Well,
is
there was a little bit more to it, that because the henchman guy, he actually takes out the grenade
oh,
because
that's right.
he was around the corner.
Yeah, right.
You're right. They were the opposite ends of the hallway. There's like a wall protecting the one guy. Turns around, Nicolas Cage is gone. So
Yep.
then he comes back, takes a grenade out, and as he's going to throw it, Cage intercepts his hand.
Hand,
And there's
yeah.
like this wonderful like palm struggle between them, and that's when he shoves it. He like gets him up against the door, is like smashing his face into it. And then he basically shoves a grenade down his pants like a Bugs Bunny routine, gets out of the way. And it's like, it's great because there's real tension. Like, are they both gonna get blown up and have to deal with that? But no, it totally works out. And I did like this. It's a very darkly lit scene, but I
Mhm.
did like the half guy with the guts hanging out and that dead look on his face. It was fun.
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, overall, we're talking a heavy film, but I think you're right. This film is better than what ratings would suggest. On Ibidem, it has a 5.3 out of 10 rating, which is a little bit better, but not by a lot. I'm not sure what people expect from this film, but it's Cage being Cage. He brings his all pretty much to any role he's in. Would you say this is good Cage or bad Cage?
I think this is really good, Cage. I mean,
Mhm.
what was it Pig? No.
Mm.
Maybe it was Pig. I think it might have been Pig from a couple of years ago that
Yeah.
people were telling me to watch because they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is a great performance by Nicolas Cage and a pretty solid movie." I think I've been so jaded by other Nicolas Cage movies. I know we've disagreed on some of them.
Sure,
Like
yeah.
what was that? The colors. It's got colors in the title. It's
Oh
like a
yeah,
sci-fi thing.
yeah. There was the Lovecraftian.
That
Yeah.
one, yeah. Like
Mhm.
there's just these. This is Cage before he started doing the real low rent stuff where like, hey, the director just wants to work with Nicolas Cage so he can get one of those famous Nicolas Cage screams and screeches on film. He does not screech or scream or do any mugging or anything
No.
like that in this movie. It's weird to watch nowadays because yeah, this is back when he was still a capital A actor. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, again, it's tough because, this is no slight, and not saying it's a bad thing at all, but some of the action films we've gotten in recent years have set a bar quite high. So it's a little bit tough to go back to some of these films like this that are in a similar tone or vein and go, oh, but I think there's a lot to enjoy here. I mean, it is not John Wick, but this is before John Wick. So I mean, it's
Oh yeah, you can recommend it, but you do have to set the expectation. Like, it's about a hitman who's kind of going through like a midlife crisis, and he finds himself in Bangkok on one last job that doesn't go as he thought it would. It's more of a meditative piece, but there's some really solid action and drama in it. If you go in and say, "Oh yeah, it's like Nicolas Cage in Bangkok and it's sort of precursor to John Wick," that's totally false advertising, and that's not what you're gonna get.
yeah, no, you're not gonna get that, but you do get a pretty solid action film, for what it is. I don't think this was released in theaters, so this was a direct to video type of action film. But I think it's just fine. Yeah, Cage putting his all into it, and it takes some surprising turns. I agree.
Oh,
Excuse me. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's a movie I would watch again, but it's
Mhm,
not one that I would put on like, oh, I want to watch a ridiculous Nick Cage movie or I want to watch a ridiculous action movie. That's not that. It's like something
mhm.
you got to be in the right mindset for it. But yeah, I would definitely watch it at least one more time.
Interesting trivia tidbit. Apparently, it was shot during the 19th September coup d'état in Thailand. Nonetheless, filming only stopped for 6 hours. Uh, Apparently, the armory department claimed they only fired one shot in the coup. so, so
Wow.
yeah, they only had to pause for 6 hours. So there you go.
Well, I wonder because there's that scene where there's like he's trying to blend into like a bunch of like bustling kind of street chaos. And he like
Yeah.
steals the one guy's hat and takes another guy's camera. Like, how the hell did they pull that off? Now that you mentioned there was a coup, I wonder if if the director's like, oh no, just Nick, just go walk in the street, take this guy's hat and his camera. We'll make it up as we go along. We'll work it into the story. This is
just,
great.
just guerrilla shot it. Just yeah, it's like yeah, it's
Or they just said, hey, there's a coup going on.
I
Nick, just go take a walk in the street.
I
And that's just what he does anyway.
I will say though, I found it kind of funny that uh after he avoids assassination attempt, he's trying to go and blend in, and I'm like, okay, I'm like sitting here going, no offense to anyone, but he doesn't exactly blend in with the rest of the folks.
No. No, he's got at least a foot on everybody. I did like that I think the reason he stole the camera is because he could
He
like
could put it
shove
in
it in
his
front of his
face. Yeah,
face. Yeah, that was a
yeah.
nice touch.
Yeah, no, I like how he covered himself up because I was wondering how that was gonna work, but the initial, they were right near on his heels. I'm like, "Don't you guys see?" They
Well,
you know,
he was doing some crouching. Like he wasn't like
he
he was kind of
was
hunched over and yeah.
I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
it'd be tough to hide Nick Cage. So it was just I understand why he grabbed the camera and the hat. That was a good touch. That was a nice touch. So there you have it, folks. Bangkok Dangerous, our first film in One Night in Bangkok. We got some interesting films coming up, including I gotta do a little housekeeping. Now, in the past month or so, you've heard me talk about one of the films that we'll be covering this month, Only God Forgives. And I was saying that I didn't quite care for it. Well, it turns out I'm senile. And I checked back my review that I did 10 years ago of Only God Forgives, and it turns out I liked it. So
Really?
I corrected myself. So I just want to go on record. Say I fully recognize I apparently have been speaking wrong about myself in my opinion. So we'll see how it changes. Before I was saying, hey, we'll see if I like Only God Forgives this time around. I'm going to spin it around. We'll see if I still like Only God Forgives this time around. So just wanted to clear the air for those that might care or who anyone, maybe two people paying attention, you know, I actually enjoyed Only God Forgives. So that is coming up this month. Next week, we've got Ong Bak, which I'm looking forward to revisiting. It's been a long time since I watched that film. You said you haven't seen it, right?
Mm-mm.
And then at the end of the month, we are looking at a classic from 1971/73. It's called The Big Boss, aka Fists of Fury, with Mr. Bruce Lee, because yeah, I haven't talked about a Bruce Lee film. So I want to talk about a Bruce Lee film, and this is a perfect opportunity. So yeah, that's about it, folks. Oh, I do have another announcement. We're not doing voting this year for the specials next year, but I did come up with the specials theme for next year. This year, it was a perfect 10th anniversary. Thank you so much for everybody who's stuck with us for 10 years. Next year, we're doing rated PG for pre-code. Yes, a PC, excuse me. We're
Yeah,
doing rated sorry, PG. Duh. See, I'm going C now. We're doing rated PC for pre-code. Yes, that's right. We are looking at 12 pre-code films. So that is going to be interesting to try to build themes around, as we will still randomly pick them like we do this year. But for each month, but we will be covering pre-code movies. So it should be interesting getting into the black and white classics. And I already hear some people falling asleep. I already hear some people falling asleep out there. But you'd be surprised, folks, what movies fall into the pre-code category. So just stay tuned for more information on that. And now, as always, enough of me babbling. Here's where I give my guests the license to shill. So Ian, please shill away.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. Also on YouTube under Kicking the Seat, and do movie reviews and live streams and interviews and all that other good stuff. So yeah, come check us out and yeah, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Wednesday of this week, we'll be talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. So come hang out and we'll talk about that. And yeah, otherwise I'm here with Mark talking about movies every Monday. And I love that this Bangkok month is all first time viewings for me. One thing, Mark, about Bruce Lee. Have you seen Bruce Lee movies? Or you just haven't talked about Bruce Lee movies?
Oh yeah, no, I've seen Bruce Lee films. Oh yeah.
Okay, because
No.
I have not really. I saw Enter the Dragon
Mhm.
for the first time like a month ago, and it's awesome.
Ooh,
And I
yeah.
know if you're not aware of this, I don't know if theaters near you get a lot of the Fathom event screenings.
Yeah, we get some of them, not all of them, but some, yeah.
Because in like 2 weeks, they're doing Enter the Dragon for the 50th
I know.
anniversary.
I
Yeah.
know, I saw that, the remastered Enter the Dragon, I'm like, "Ooh, that might be worth the trip up," because I gotta travel, to Wausau for that, but I may go see that because I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be fun to see on the big screen."
Yeah.
Definitely. For those who might care on Special Mark Productions outside of this wonderful podcast and our Patreon, as always, where you can get the conversation before the conversation, I got a number of things coming up. I've got a couple of reviews, one live now, another one tomorrow. But by the time this drops, those will both already be live. But I also have couple of interviews. I'm getting to interview Marcel Walls for his film coming up called That's My Rap. It's a giallo type film, apparently. I'm be watching it right after I'm done recording here for the interview. And we'll also be interviewing Monique T. Parent, who's been in many a film, and she stars in That's My Rap as well. So we got that. And a new show, which I don't know if it'll be regular. I always try out new things, 17 years doing this. It's called The Final Cut, and it's side panel edition to where I review a couple of comic books. So it's the Final Cut side panel edition to where I'll be reviewing yeah, I don't know if I'll keep doing it, but I'm trying it out. We'll see how it goes. I might do 1 or 2 of them, but so that's all coming this week. And by the time this drops, these should be live on the YouTube channel and all our website. Lovely stuff. So thank you all to our supporters, our listeners. We love you all. And until next time, we'll just say a good night, everyone.